Well, I tore apart Steve's heater control unit for the dash, and I'm still in awe over this lever here. I've never seen this. I've never seen one with a crook in it like that. But it's weird. Like, I don't get that at all. But anyway, they didn't really work too good together. This one, I think this is pretty correct for 55 for the deluxe heater setup. That just, I don't know, man. I'm gonna get new levers. This one, it actually looks like it has a little bit of a bend in it anyway. These things are brittle, they break easy, so I'm just gonna get a new lever set. They're not that expensive. So I've got this is the background for the lens, and it's just supposed to be like a, you know, semi-gloss black or semi-flat black or whatever. The lens is pretty messed up, so we're gonna have to get a new lens. And then the paint is actually sloughing off in there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mask off this unit, and I'm gonna blast with my little blaster all this out down in here, blast this face of this, and then this will get and then he's got one of these brand new in the package over there. That's pretty cool he had that, so we don't get to put this whole pitted up nasty thing in there. It was missing, there's supposed to be 6 screws, 3 on each side. These are countersink fine thread. It only had 4 in it, so I'm going to get out my box of parts. I have some of these that are for parts, and I'm going to take the other 2 screws out because I can't stand that. I'm not putting that back together with just 4 screws in it, even though it worked just fine. You know what I mean? I can't do it. But I ended up putting everything else in here. It looked like it has a new switch in it, a blower motor switch. And then the knobs actually look pretty nice, so those definitely I don't think are originals. Those are probably repops. Even the screws are still nice, so I think that's a new set of knobs. So there is quite a few pieces that we can reuse. But anyway, I need to take apart the little clip here off of this, and I need to take the cables out, and then I'm going to try to, I usually just use 4/0 steel wool and spray wax and grease remover, and it just kind of lubricates the 4/0 steel wool, but it'll clean this up really nice and get a lot of the gunk off of it. I don't want to blast the whole unit. I guess I could, but I don't really need to. But anyway, I'll restore it. It'll look really nice. I mean, it's on the dash. It's in your face every time you get in the car, so it has to look good. You know what I mean? We don't want to put crappy stuff in there. I have new paint on the dash and new chrome bezels and everything, and that's just one item. You don't want to just stick in there and call it a day. It's gotta look new like everything else. All right, so I blasted some of the parts from Steve's car here. So I went ahead and blasted the whole heater control unit after I took it apart. I'm just gonna go ahead and paint it. Done the lever, done the back face piece. Got all the old green paint out of the front of it. Went ahead and blasted the, whatever the hell this is called. I'm going to put a weld in here, so I wanted to blast that to bare metal, so I got a good weld on it. That's for the brake pedal arm. And then this is some of the miscellaneous heater box stuff. So I'm having problems with the heater box. It's one of the parts in particular is being a real pain to blast. I got the inside of the brake pedal bracket blasted, but I need to do the other side. The blaster I have is light duty. It doesn't do a fantastic job by any means, but anyway, this piece here, I don't know what that red is on there. I don't know if that's red primer or... Anyway, this thing has been painted so much, it takes a lot of effort to get all that off here. It's thick. So somebody's painted this before, and I have got to, I guess I'm going to have to chemical strip it first. I can't seem to get it off there. These heater boxes, they weren't really primed. They were just painted. I mean, if it has primer on it, I'd be surprised. This stuff comes off fairly easy on a stock box that hasn't had a whole lot of crap done to it. Anyway, I got this kind of decent. I'll have to go back and finish it up with sandpaper and stuff, but kind of pitted around here on the bottom. It's from mice, urine. So it usually rots metal pretty bad, corrodes it and pits it pretty bad. But I'm probably going to go back over this again after my compressor cools down, because it's getting it pretty decent. It's just the outsides are a pain. This one's not so bad, it's just that one. This one's definitely from a different car, because somebody's painted that thing like red or orange or something. But I took all the linkage bar and all that stuff out of it, and the door, the flapper door in there, so all that can be painted up separately and look real nice. Alright, so I got the squirrel cage off of the blower motor. It came off pretty easy. Really surprised. I took a wire wheel and cleaned up around that and knocked the clip off there. These clips are, I mean, they're a little bit of a pain in the butt. I use two 90-degree picks and kind of work them up under there, and it'll eventually pop them off there. But once they come off, I take the hammer and just kind of lightly tap it. I don't try to completely flatten it, but it'll push the sides back down where it'll grip it again. But you know, I'm gonna put that in a bag. So I'm gonna have to reuse this. We're gonna get a new blower motor, so I have to take these two crazy looking nuts off. You ever seen nuts like that? That's crazy looking, isn't it? You know, I have to take those off, and then the blower motor will come off this plate. Now this plate is pretty jacked up. It is bent, but I can straighten it because it is sheet metal at the end of the day. So anyway, the studs, I had talked about it in the video about putting some stainless steel bolts in there and welding the heads in. And this is just one of the reasons why I like to use stainless. That way it looks nice. But see how the threads are gone on that? This sticks out of the firewall. So these, that one's completely trashed, and this one's bent. This is the way they usually are. They're usually bent, and I mean, they get stripped as well, but those will have to be replaced. I don't know if I might have another one of these in my shed, you know, that's not all bent up and stuff, but I have to keep in mind that I have another 55 to build now besides my wife's car, so I can't just go in there and start grabbing parts in my shed, because they may be needed for that two-door post project. One of those cars didn't have a heater box, so if it would have had an extra one, it would have been kind of nice in this part of it. But anyway, I'll just try to straighten this one up and all that kind of crap. But anyway, the squirrel cage, it looks pretty nice, and this will get blasted, and then it'll get painted. Somebody's went in here and spray painted it. You can see how rough the paint job is. They just painted over dust and all. But I feel like, you know, with this blasted clean and then a nice coat of paint on it, it's just going to kind of help the paint, or the air, just kind of flow across everything real nice. If all the paint's smooth, it just seems to me it would flow a little smoother and harder if it, you know, had a nice something to go off of. Looks like a bunch of grease packed down on the corners of that. Let's investigate here. Where did I see that at? It's probably just dirt, but yeah, I think it's just dirt that got painted over. So this will get blasted and reused. And I mentioned it in the other video. My local O'Reilly's does not list a blower motor for a 55 Chevy Bel Air. But when you put in 210 series instead of Bel Air, a blower motor shows up, and it's like 25 bucks. Well, it used to be. But these old ones, they are, I mean, you'll have one and it turns and you'll think it's okay, and you'll start using your heater and it'll just seize up. It'll make all kinds of racket and then just seize up. It happened to me over and over when I was younger. The one that I had last the longest, which I think was for a whole winter, it was a used original. I drilled a hole right in the center of this, a small hole, and used 3-in-1 oil down in that hole. And then I'd put a little daub of silicone on there on the end of it, just so water couldn't get down in there. But I did get that one to last a little while, but it was a huge difference when I bought a new blower motor and put in it, how much smoother and more air it flew through there. But I don't know if these have any more CFM or, you know, RPM, whatever you want to call it. I don't know if the new ones put out more than these, but I just don't think these old originals ever did flow that well. But anyway, a lot of work going through here and redoing all this crap. Alright, so I got the heater core out of the box, and then there's a square plate that this screws to, and then in turn screws to the box itself. I've got it out there in my kiddie pool so I can blast it. So this is the cable. You can tell this is a brand new cable, but when they painted the box, they painted cable and all. And what I've got on this is just reducer, like urethane reducer, and the reason is I don't think the reducer will be as harsh as acetone or lacquer thinner, and I don't want to hurt this zinc coating, so I'm going to see if that'll... It's really heavy right here in this area because it's right up next to the box, but I don't think I got my little rag wet enough. I think it's going to work. It's just going to take a little bit of scrubbing right there. It's pretty built up right there. I'll keep scrubbing on it. I don't know what kind of paint that is, but that stuff is stuck, man. Man, are you kidding me? I don't really want to use anything too harsh on it because it'll scuff the coating up. I figured it'd wipe right off there. That was probably some really old spray paint, and that old spray paint, that was the good stuff. I kind of feel like all the spray paint we have nowadays kind of sucks. I was always a fan of Krylon, and they changed their setup several times, and then I noticed the last several years it didn't seem to flow or turn out as nice as what it used to. Man, that really sucks. That's not. Dang it. Take a lot more scrubbing than what I thought it was going to. I thought that was going to be a walk in the park, man. It's going to be a walk in the park, all right, but it's like a theme park that's like 5 miles wide. Got some parts blasted, and the main box, I've got the inside of one of the sides, but I'm gonna have to get some paint stripper and put it on there because it's just taking way too long to blast it with my little blaster I have. But I got these parts all blasted up, and you know, all this stuff will get painted. But that's a lot of little crap right there. But it'll definitely turn out nice having that stuff blasted clean like that. Especially when I go in and paint things, you know, with different shades of color and everything, like the brake pedal assembly. It'll look really nice and detailed. And it's just going to, you know, blasting it and painting it apart and then going back and reassembling it, it'll just look like $1,000,000. But You know, I need to order some parts. I guess I need to have Steve order some parts. That means I got to go spend some time in front of the computer on a website, find all that stuff. Alright guys, so I've done a bunch of painting of parts today for Steve's car. This is the heater control unit that goes in the dash, and I blasted the whole thing. I took it all apart, blasted the whole thing, and then I painted it. This is VHT, like high heat aluminum is the color. This is like pot metal. So I just sprayed the whole thing. Now the inside of this, a bulb goes in there to illuminate your lens and stuff. So that is Krylon. It's called emerald green. I have a Krylon, or had, that's called Kelly green, and it's a lot closer to the original. So I couldn't find it, so I ended up using the emerald green. But that'll basically illuminate green through that lens. But anyway, I did the little separate cable brackets. These are in a color, and it's called oil rubbed bronze. It's also a Krylon color. Oil rubbed bronze satin. This is brushed metallic. And to me, this looks like in the shop in here in the garage, it looks like black oxide color. So that's what I put on that. It kind of makes it look like a black oxide. So it's more of like a satiny finish color. I painted the slide lever, the aluminum as well. That goes inside that. And then a whole bunch of other parts got painted. This is his, I guess it'd be a blend door, I don't even know. This got painted. Scroll cage got painted, and the heater core plate, mounting plate. This is all just flat black etching primer is all that is. The etching primer works really good because it's SEM brand. It really does a good job of sticking to bare metal. It's kind of impressive for an aerosol to me. I've had to sand it before, and it actually sands without flaking. Anyway, I use that because it's inexpensive. Well, kinda, but it bonds to bare metal instead of having to go back and epoxy or etch. You know, use the high-end, more expensive stuff in a spray gun. It's nice that it comes out of a spray can. It's convenient, we'll say. So this is the spring for the brake pedal assembly. This is Duplicolor's Universal Gold. I like this for like a gold cad color. So I painted it gold because the whole brake pedal assembly is black, so I just did it because it's a different color, and it'll look kind of nice. It'll almost make it look stock because of how it looks like a cad. This is also the etching satin black aerosol SEM brand paint. This all got blasted to bare metal, and anyway, so I painted that so the finish turned out really nice on it. This goes completely under the dash, you don't even see it, but anyway, that's going to be done pretty nice. I've got the brake pedal arm up here. This is the Rust-Oleum in the quart can. It's called Low Gloss Black. That's what I painted that, because you do see this, and it's supposed to be like a semi-gloss or satiny color. So anyway, that will be inside this unit with the gold spring in there. And then this is this is the lever that operates the blend door right here. It slides down into that. This is that oil rubbed bronze as well. And I still have a couple more pieces to paint, but it's getting pretty late in the afternoon and I'm done. What else? Oh, the pin that goes in the brake pedal. Somebody had messed with this before, and it had two little welds on each side, so I went ahead and I started out with some tack welds on it. I was afraid it would, shift or move, so I started out tacking it, and then right there I gave it a stitch. But that shouldn't move now. It should be pretty good, but right now it's still pretty warm. But when that's cooled off, I will brush it real good with a wire brush and then paint it, probably that SEM black satin etching primer stuff. But that was a lot of work just painting them little bitty pieces, but I need to go get some paint stripper for these heater box parts. These things are these are a bear to get the paint off of, especially this part that has been painted a couple of times, and it's a bear to try to get it off there with my blaster. So I soaked. I tried blasting these, and somebody's painted them with like a red paint. I tried blasting this, and it's the same thing as that. It's just very difficult for me to get it off there with my little blaster I have, my little light duty blaster. So what I did was I soaked it in muriatic acid overnight. That one, this one, and this one. And it took some of it off, but not all of it. But if I'd left it in there, it probably would have. One other day, it would have probably took it all off there. But I'm just gonna, this has been painted red as well. I'm gonna have to get some chemical paint stripper and put on this stuff, and you know, at least try to get the brunt of the stuff off, and then go back and blast it to smooth it up real nice. But it's kind of a pain in the butt. Oh well, there's still lots of work to go on these parts. Okay, well, I got the wiper motor pretty much mounted and the arms across. So what I need to try to do now is mount the fuse box, and Steve got a 21 circuit harness instead of a 12, and I'm going to try to put it in that little bitty spot right there, because this wiper motor, for whatever reason, has to be so damn giant. Crazy. So we went from a 12 circuit that was in it, which is this big, to that one, which is a little bit longer, which may not be too bad of a deal there. But while I've got both of these harnesses here, I want to show the differences. Now, I'm an easy wiring fan. I've installed a bunch of these harnesses, man. They are my absolute favorite. You can't beat them for the price and a universal application. So anyway, if you're going to hide wiring in your car and, you know, do some stuff, you know, putting in an alternator instead of a generator and that little bit of stuff like that, this is most definitely the budget way to go, for sure. Anyway, this is easy wiring, and this is the first kit he bought, and this, the guy had advertised it as easy wiring, and it's not. So I want to show you the differences. That when I opened this, when it got here, I was under the assumption this was easy wiring, and when I opened this, I knew it wasn't. So I'm going to show you the signs and basically show you the differences. Now again, this is a 21 circuit and this is a 12, so there is a difference in circuitry. 21 is going to be for like power windows, power locks, cruise control, you know, a bunch of extra stuff. This one is basically just for a basic car, which is kind of what Steve's car is. It doesn't really need all this crap, but I'm going to tie the wires up and try to store them in behind where the kick panel goes, and that way they'll be there if he ever adds power windows or anything like that. But so anyway, this imitation easy wire harness, it comes with just printed off papers, and they were about out of ink when they printed off because it gets pretty light in places trying to read it. And it's stapled together at the top corner. Easy wiring, you get a book. It's a little paperback book, and it has diagrams and all that kind of stuff in there. It covers Ford stuff, it covers Mopar and GM, but so that's the differences in instructions for sure. Now each kit will come with a little bag of goodies here. Now right here, there's two plugs. There's two white plugs, and all the wires are black. Those are for your headlights. So that would be an absolute nightmare trying to wire that. So the easy wiring, when you pull it out, they're color coded. They're GM color coded, but they're color coded. So a lot nicer deal, in my opinion. So the biggest thing to me was when you're looking at this easy wire harness, especially when I pull the camera back, you can make out what the fuses go to. You can see what they say. They're in white letters, easy to read. This one, I don't know how it's showing up on the camera, but I can barely see anything on this. So that's really, really cheesy. They could have done a better job on that. The flashers in the EasyWire kit has raised lettering on it, which is probably a little bit more, I don't know, maybe a name brand, I don't know. These are plain Jane, they ain't got nothing. They don't even have any ink stampings on them. So I wouldn't really trust those to be worth a crap anyway. But that is pretty much a replica of the EasyWire kit, and these are all over eBay for around, I think they're like $60, $70, $80. And the EasyWire kit I think is about $150. I think this was $180 for the 21 circuit. But I have to basically take all of this spaghetti mess and put in that car. So here we go. Alright, so this is pretty time consuming, trying to basically weed this the way I need it. I've got a different hole in the firewall to go to the starter, temperature sender, oil pressure sender, and the distributor or coil. So I've had to weed out. Now they tie up your individual circuits, like they tie up your tail light harness, they tie up your column and ignition switch stuff. But anyway, everything's kind of separated, and they say to not take all this loose. The problem is they've got this tied pretty tight, and you can't really move it or alter it. And some of this stuff is going over itself, which makes the bundle bulkier. So it needs to be braided, you know, not necessarily braided, but it needs to be run beside each other, each wire individually, so it lays down smaller and nicer. The biggest problem is this is the bottom of the fuse box. It goes in like that. These are coming out the bottom, so if I left this like this would be right at, like you would see it just looking in from the door being opened. I would rather that go up, so that's how I'm gonna route it. So I'm gonna have to take all this loose and then run each wire separately, just to make it a cleaner, nicer install. So I've already weeded out 2 wires that are not going to be used, and that was tachometer and power antenna. He bought the instrument cluster from Classic Instruments, and he got it without the tack, and I don't think he's going to want to screw a tack to the top of the dash, or, you know, hose clamp one to the top of the column or something like that. So anyway, I got rid of the wire, which I could always put it right back in at a different time. But anyway, I know he's not going to put a power antenna on it. It has a brand new stock replacement manual antenna on it. Now, another thing that I probably going to have to weed out that I don't think it needs, and that's the power windows and the power locks. His car was originally a power window car, and when he first got it, I think only one window worked, and it was going to be pretty expensive to replace all the electric motors and all that stuff. So he just had me get mechanical replacement manual window mechanisms. I think I got them from Dan Chuck back then, or H&H, and it was pretty inexpensive. So basically converted it back to, or converted it to manual. And you can see this hole. This is where the factory metal wire harness thing goes into the door here, and there's a hole in the end of the door too. So I mean, they didn't even weld any of this up. So this you see when the doors open. So what I'd like to do is cut out some sheet metal and maybe, you know, round the corners just a little bit. Basically just make a flat piece. And I thought about welding maybe a stud on the back of it, or 2 studs, and then have another piece of sheet metal as just a strip. And that way it's completely flat out here, and I've got some extra of this paint, so I can paint that body color and it'll lay down inside that flat. And then on the back side the studs will be there, and I can put that strap across the back that's wider than that, and then put like a serrated flange nut, or a, you know, something on there, lock nut or whatever, and basically bolt it to it, and it'll stay stuck to it that way. Instead of trying to panel bond something on and something gooping out here on the paint. I think that would be a nice cover up for that. It'd be kind of sneaky, you know what I mean? But anyway, I'm pretty sure he's not going to put power windows and locks in the car. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out of this harness because those wires are big, they're going to be bulky, and it's going to be a big power wire, you know, looped up and stuffed down in the cowl panel over here to short out on something over a period of time. So I would rather just weed it out and be done with it. But what I am keeping, and this was out of the main engine harness bundle, this gray wire is for the electric fan, and this black wire is for the air conditioning compressor. So he may put air conditioning on it later, so these are most definitely getting kept in the harness, and I'm going to loop these up pretty tight, and those will get put into the kick panel behind it so you don't see it. And if at any time when the air conditioning goes on, we can pull the kick panel off and I can pull that wiring out and run it through there. So that'll work out pretty good. But so I've weeded out the main harness that would be like for your headlight harness is what I would consider it. It goes out for your headlights, but it has all kinds of stuff with it, other things. So I've weeded it out into two separate looms here, this one and this one. These are keepers, but these, I think, yeah, this side, this is the ones that I had the separate hole in the firewall down over there to go out behind the engine so you don't see all this going across the engine. Now, in case you guys don't know, I'll show you how the factory wiring was ran on these cars. So it's going to be hard to show you on Steve's car because this firewall's been smoothed. Now, the factory had these metal tabs that are welded to the firewall up here on this flange right here. So your wiring harness come out, and it went, actually it come out over here, some of it. There's a hole here with a grommet. So that wiring went up here for your starter and solenoid and all that kind of stuff, up here, across, and then down. So your wiring harness went up and over and down, which is ugly. Nobody wants to see that crap. So what I did was I drilled a hole in the firewall and I put a rubber grommet in it, and you can't even see it, but it's back here underneath where these plug wires are in the corner down here. So the wiring for the distributor and the temperature sender and the oil pressure switch and the solenoid and stuff comes out from down here. So I'll have to route it behind the firewall pad, which I will put the old school convoluted wire cover on, because it's plastic and it, you know, it'll hold up behind there and nothing will get chafed. It's about the only time I use that stuff, guys, because it's ugly. This is the stuff I'm talking about right here, this old convoluted tubing stuff. This stuff will be behind the firewall and you won't see it. Actually, that's temperature and oil pressure right there on a separate one. And the other ones, you still can't see it. Where the heck are they? I know I got them in here. Oh, right here. So I've got the rubber grommet and everything out of it. So I'll have to pull these out. These I'd custom put on because when I put in the Classic Instruments dash, it came with electronic senders. This car originally had a triple gauge pod screwed underneath the dash with mechanical gauges. So anyway, it got converted to electric, so I had to run my own wires. And now that we have a 21 circuit, it has those wires. So I'm going to remove this stuff and put my stuff through there because it comes out right behind the distributor and you don't see it. I like hiding stuff when I can. Now, the biggest problem I have is I had talked to him a long time ago about hiding the wires and running them up in behind the behind the fender like my car is. Originally, there's a inner fender that runs here. It's probably going to be better to show you on my car. I cannot believe how dusty my car is. Actually, yeah, I can. So never mind the dust, guys. So anyway, the factory harness comes out of a rubber grommet that's more over here. And it just runs straight out across this part of the inner fender. There's little clips that clip into the inner fender, and the wiring harness runs right through here. So what I had done, which I forgot I'd done, and I talked about doing it on his car until I remembered that, hey, I moved this over. So I did my holes over here on this side to get them more out of sight, and I used a convoluted rubber flex hose from the cowl to door wiring on, you know, like late model cars. I got this at LKQ and I don't remember what it come off of. There was actually a door off of a car leaning up against it, and that was on there, so it was easy to remove. But I had my wiring going through there, up in behind the center fender up here, and then over and through underneath the core support. But I asked him if he wanted to do this to his car that we could hide the wires, but his hole's way over here, so I doubt I can find one that long that would reach from there to way over here. So I guess we're just going to have to run it across the inner fender like stock. But you know, when all that wiring's not laying everywhere, it just makes for a really nice clean installation, and it just looks sanitary under here, and a lot of people can't understand why it looks so sanitary, and it's basically because of all the extra time I spent hiding wires. Actually, I think the biggest problem I have is I have to mount this box, and the bolts that I have from the other fuse box, these just barely hang out the back of these tabs, so these really aren't long enough. And I'm most likely going to go ahead and just drill, because it takes a bolt here and it takes a bolt up here, so I'm more than likely going to have to drill 2 holes in the firewall. And I'll probably, if I can find some more, these are socket cap Allens, which look real nice. I've got them polished up, but I would probably run these from the back side of the firewall. The biggest problem is I have to try to cut through this firewall pad, which is stock replacement. It's like thick cardboard on the top, but it has this jute padding just like this behind it. This stuff is very difficult to mess with, you know, the cardboard and the jute together, but the bolts are so short, I don't think they're going to be long enough to even get a couple threads on the nuts. So I'm kind of limited on space here, so that harness is going to have to be kind of right about in here. And now I'm looking at it, kind of worried about a kick panel. Golly, I don't have any kick panels to check for fitment. Dang it, this just gets more fun. Alright guys, so I wanted to check this while I was up in here. This is common. So these are your cowl vents, and you have a cable that mounts underneath your dash here with a knob on it. That's what opens these, so you can get fresh air driving down the road from your louvers below your windshield, behind your hood. Anyway, when these are closed, it's supposed to be tightly sealed with a seal to keep the air from bleeding in here. Like especially in the winter time, you'd freeze your butt off if these were bad, because air would be leaking in around them. And these are trashed. I could see in here that part of the seal is gone. Now the cables are out, and so I can turn this by hand, but see how that seal's just falling apart? So it's supposed to have a wide seal all the way around it, and it is pretty much non-existent. These are not fun to change out. I mean, it's not terrible, but these little rivets, you have to grind the backside to make the rivets come out, and then you put the new seal in there and you sandwich it back together. And I usually use stainless steel button head Allens in there with a nylon lock nut on the back, just some short ones. And anyway, that's how I put them back together. But anyway, in case you don't know, your heater or your pull cable mounts into the dash, and it takes clutch head screws. And if you don't have any clutch head screwdrivers, you're not taking apart one of these cars. I mean, you can if you're creative, I guess. I made one time out of a flat blade screwdriver. So anyway, the cable comes down and goes in behind, and this is actually the cable bracket right here that holds the tension on the cable, holds it in place, and it goes through a hole back here. There's the hole right there, but that cable comes out and goes into here. So this is adjustable for your cable length right here. So to get this out, there's a spring right here, and you grab the bottom of this and pull down, and then just pull it out. So to reinstall it, see the pin on the bottom, you stick that back down in there, hold this down, stick the bottom in, and then get it up there in place, and then let go of it, and it'll pop into place. But anyway, I'm gonna have to put, oh, look at that nice run job on there. That's the kind of crap that drives me crazy. So I'm gonna have to put new seals on these. That kind of sucks, but it's just part of restoring cars. It's all this little stuff that people don't think about that has to be done. Wow, what's left of that seal is actually stuck. That was weird. I haven't seen that before. It's like, oh, they painted it in place is what they did. when they went in here and painted all this, they painted them shut, and that's why part of that seal stayed there. Anyway, what I'll do is I'll go in here and I'll sand this up real nice. The inside of this, sand this really, really nice, and then go back and paint this. I'll just use some of that Sim etching black primer, because those louver openings are so big on the screens that go on here. There's screens that bolt on here. The openings are so big you can see in here, so this needs to be painted black so it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb like this old dusty looking crud is there. And then these, I'm just going to end up blasting them after I take them apart and paint them. But I'll have to get some hardware for these. I'll have to put the seals on the list. More work. So you can generally use a drill bit and drill that out, but most usually when you're sitting there drilling it, it starts spinning and then you're just kind of stuck. So I just use the 90-degree angle grinder and get it done, but it usually puts some little scratch marks in there, so then I go back with a Scotch-It disc and just clean it up, clean up the metal. These will get blasted and then repainted. That Scotch-It disc will take out those harsh marks, but I was careful with it. I didn't go too far. I didn't get real crazy on it anyway. And it really doesn't matter if you chew it up anyway, because it's the backside, you don't ever see it, but going really slow, because if you really pull it real hard, it'll bend it. This is paper thin metal. But anyway, that's how you put in your new seals. They will be wider, so some of it will be behind the plates sandwiched and the other piece will hang out. So this will allow you to get your old seal out, and then I'll blast these and these will get repainted. That's how you take a cowl vent door apart. Alright guys, so I always clean out the bottom of the dashes for the cowl vent pull cables for your doors here. So these are 1032, so I use a 1032 tap and I go in there and run that through and clean them out. There's two on each side. It's just so when you go to put your new screws in there, you don't, there's not a bunch of paint buildup and clear coat and all that kind of stuff, or if somebody cross-threaded them at one time, it's basically going to ensure that your screw goes in all the way without stripping out or breaking it off. Alright guys, so when Steve brought his heater box to me, he brought these two items because I had asked him if he wanted me to go ahead and put an amp in the car since all the wiring's getting redone. I've got all the stereo stuff pulled back out, so we might as well, rewire everything and add an amplifier. So that's what we're going to do. Now he's not going to put a subwoofer in. This is just going to be for the 6x9s and the 3.5s at the front, but it should sound pretty good being amplified, obviously. But anyway, this is the little kicker amp. It's the same one I have in my car, And you know, we're old guys, we don't need no 1,000-watt amplifier. I think it's a 380 watts or 360 or something times 4. So anyway, that's apparently they tested it and it put out 417 watts. So that's pretty cool. Come with a certificate. Mine didn't come with that. That must be something new they're doing. So anyway, this came with it. Now this was an Amazon purchase. I just found it on Amazon and it came with this, and it was a package, and it was really, really good priced. I don't remember how much it was. And I took a picture of it and sent it to him, and he ended up getting on Amazon and getting it. But this is not a Kicker brand piece, but it's really, really cool. This is the neatest RCA cables I've ever seen, man. These are awesome. They have like that new style weave sleeve over the top of it that's transparent. You can kind of see through it. These are really, really nice RCA cables. Like, this kind of stuff like this impresses me, the little detail things. But I thought the little fuse holder is really trick looking as well. Has a little window in it. I mean, that's a really nice little unit, man. That'll look good. And then it comes with, I think that's an 8-gauge power wire. I think this is, I'm pretty sure it's 8-gauge. Yep, says it right there. So it has the remote wire and the power wire stuff, ground. So that was a hell of a good deal to get an amp and the wiring kit. Now, I've never heard of this brand or anything, but I think I'm going to buy this exact one for my wife's car because I think it's really, really cool. DS18, I think is what that says. And it's amp kit 8-gauge. So it's 8-gauge power install kit for one amplifier up to 840 watts. But I'm kind of impressed with that kit, man. It looks really nice, actually. I'm not sure what DS18 is. I'm assuming that's a brand. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's really, really cool looking. But this is going to be mounted underneath the seat on the passenger side, and I'll have to build a little panel out of wood and carpet it and all that stuff. If you guys caught my really old video of my wife's 4-door, I built an amp plate out of wood, and I wrapped it in carpet to mount it underneath her seat on the passenger side. And I used furniture plugs that I drilled holes through, and the wires go down into that and behind the wood. Anyway, really trick setup, and I'm going to do the same thing on Steve's car. It'll look really, really nice.